Hi, welcome back to the virtual Triduum retreat sponsored by Resurrection Parish in Green Bay, Wisconsin. My name's Tony Pickler. Today we'll be focusing on Good Friday, the second day of our Triduum, and we welcome back Dr. Terry Nelson Johnson from Chicago, Illinois.
The Paschal Mystery Pilgrimage continues, and we will turn our attention to Good Friday and Holy Saturday. I'd love for you to imagine that the association with Jesus and the Paschal Mystery is that he went first, and he went elegantly and recklessly and courageously and vulnerably, and that he in turn accompanies us in our Paschal Mysteries. Remember, Gregory Boyle, you are either a participant or you're the audience, and we've suggested that with respect to the Paschal Mystery, God wants us, invites us, implores us, cajoles us to be participants, to go the way of Jesus, which is the way of the Paschal Mystery. So, second day of the Paschal Mystery, Good Friday. Good Friday represents those moments in our life when life demands that we relinquish, let go, surrender. Begin to identify your own Good Fridays. Good Friday involves those moments in our lives when life demands that we relinquish, let go, surrender. Good Friday manifests itself in our lives when we say, "This is not the way I expected it to be." Or when we say, "I just can't do that anymore." And clearly, Jesus went the way of Good Friday, but he does not have the market cornered on Good Friday or the market cornered on the cross. So it's not Jesus' cross, it's the Paschal Mystery's cross. Jesus went the way of the Paschal Mystery, which is also the way of love, and so clearly he went the way of Good Friday, and we will too. In our culture, we are unconsciously invited to think of dying as the adversary. And if you want a little sort of data around that, just think of being in a room where someone who sort of knows they're going to die, not like tomorrow, but in the vicinity, and they start to talk about it. It's not uncommon for somebody else in the room to say, "Oh, don't talk like that." Don't talk like that. Like, who's uncomfortable here? Or, I know we've all had the experience of going to a hospital room and the person we're going to visit has diminished significantly since the last time we were there, so much so that you have to sort of get your bearings and orient yourself. And then at some point during the visit, it's not uncommon for somebody to say, in reference to the person in the bed who's diminished a lot, "Hey, you look great. Yeah, you look great." And then in the elevator on the way down, they're like, "Can you believe, oh my God," they look terrible. Why do we have to say you look great? Because I think we're collectively scared of Good Friday. And the clincher is, you get a phone call at 3:41 a.m., you're hoping it's a crank call, but it's not a crank call, and the person on the other end of the phone says, "If you want to see Daddy again, you better get down here soon because," help me out now, "because he's taken a turn for the worst." You know, the number of people that use that phrase and they're wearing crosses, we call it Good Friday because it's full of grace. It's not easy. It's not something we'd sign up for, but it's full of grace. Hail Mary, full of grace. Hail, second day of the Paschal Mystery, full of grace. It's not the worst. The worst isn't Good Friday. The worst is not getting to Easter. In order to get to Easter, you have to host the second day of the Paschal Mystery, which is Good Friday. One quick Good Friday story, and it involves a woman who eminently trusts the second day of the Paschal Mystery, and it happens to be my mom. The time of the story, my mom was elderly. She was in her 80s, and she presented herself to the medical system as though she was having a pretty much massive heart attack. It was very mysterious, and when it first happened, it was terrifying. And then eventually, the medical people said, "We don't understand it, and it looks like you're having a massive heart attack, but clearly you're not, so I don't know, we'll just have to live with this." It was all over her chart. She's in the hospital for something else, and it had pretty much been resolved, although she was going to stay one more day, so I was with her. Went down to the cafeteria because she was all stable. While in the cafeteria, I hear code blue. In hospitals, code blue means massive cardiac event. And so I run from the cafeteria up the 5 floors to my mom's room, and sure enough, they're all in the room and they're all doing the code blue stuff, which means her little gown is open, all the things are all over her chest. There's a lot of activity. I run in the room and I'm not polite necessarily, and I tell them I don't think this is what's happening. They say, "You don't need to be here, sir." I assure them that I do. It gets a little tense. They call security. I go to the nurse's station saying, "Hey, you better look at this chart," which they do. And then she runs into the room, and then they all walk out of the room after removing the things from my mom, and they don't make eye contact with me, hoping that I'm not the kind of person that sues. You know what I'm saying? And then my mom's exhausted, all 90 pounds of her, and she starts to sleep. I sit on that plasticky chair, that orange-covered chair, you know. You've been on those. And my mom wakes up in the middle of the night. She's like, "Are you asleep?" I'm like, "Mom, has anybody ever slept on this chair?" "No, I'm not asleep." She's like, "Come here." She pats the bed next to her. I go over and sit on the bed. She says, in a very uncharacteristic voice, "Those men." I'm like, "Mom, I'm sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen. Those men, they were distracting me." "I'm sorry, Mom. It won't happen." She said, "I thought I was dying, and they were distracting me. When I die, I want to pay attention. Do you understand me? When I'm dying, I want to pay attention." That is the faith of someone who trusts the second day of the Paschal Mystery. And I invite you to call to mind and heart some of your own Good Fridays. You moved in 7th grade. Oh, you didn't make the travel team. That school that you were desperate to be accepted to, you weren't. That relationship imploded. Your finances. The marriage is strained. The medical results weren't what you had hoped or imagined. The child arrived, and you loved them but had a hard time liking them. The child never arrived, and your grief remains. You host loneliness. You ache for intimacy. You sleep with someone, and your loneliness is exacerbated. We all have Good Fridays. And we're invited to trust that there's grace in those Fridays, and that some mysterious way they bring us to Easter. Holy Saturday. Holy Saturday, Batman. Holy Saturday is the 3rd day of the Paschal Mystery. I think it's the day that we spend more time in than any other day. Holy Saturday is the day after you've died, before the new life comes. Holy Saturday is the day that we're asked to wait on God, to yearn for Easter. Holy Saturday is the day that we wait in hope for hope. Holy Saturday is the day that we wait in hope for hope. Such a powerful day, and it asks so much of us. It's one beautiful, beautiful Holy Saturday story, and I heard it on National Public Radio, and I had to pull over because it was such a powerful story for me to hear. The story involved a gentleman that had a piece of art at a very prestigious art institute someplace, and on the side was sort of a write-up about like who he was and how this piece of art got there. And apparently he had spent a fair amount of time in Vietnam, and shortly before it was time for him to come home, he was walking on one of those jungle paths, stepped a little too far to the right, and his upper body went to one side of the path and his legs went to the other. It was sort of chaotic. They had to work quickly. They brought his upper body back and his legs remained. So this is the artist. And then the middle, this piece of art is a massive marble sphere. And in back of the marble sphere are banks of pictures indicating like how this thing was created. First bank of pictures, you see him anchored in a wheelchair in relationship to an oblong, dull, sort of block kind of thing of marble. And then over the course of months, he chisels it and polishes it until it is just pristine and perfect in its dimensions. Middle bank of pictures, you see him in his wheelchair holding a sledgehammer. And then you can almost hear the clicks of the camera as the head of the sledgehammer gets closer to the sphere of marble, and then it explodes. The most poignant picture for me is him having his stubs of his legs held by other guys. He's lying on the remaining portion of the sphere, arching his back, holding the sledgehammer, and then he just crashes that thing down. Third bank of pictures, it begins with him on the floor doing what looks like the breaststroke, and he's collecting all the pieces. Then over the course of months, he puts it back together with chicken wire, duct tape, you name it. And the piece of art is the reconstructed sphere of marble, and it's entitled, Shattered But Still Whole, a Self-Portrait. Shattered But Still Whole, a Self-Portrait. For our purposes today, I'd like to suggest that Good Friday occurred the day that his legs were separated from his upper body. This is not the way I expected it to be. Good Friday happens when life demands that you relinquish, let go, surrender. He did. So that's Good Friday. I'd like to suggest that Easter occurred, which we'll talk about later. Easter occurred the moment that he thought of the title of the piece of art, Shattered But Still Whole, a self-portrait. Holy Saturday occurred from the moment that his legs left his upper body until he finished that piece of art. Holy Saturday is not a day, it's a month, a year, 4 years, 11 years. Holy Saturday is the day after something has died, before the new life comes. And as Ken Simpson would say, none of us heal in isolation. Holy Saturday is the day of healing. Richard Rohr says, if you don't transform your pain, you will be sure to transmit it. Holy Saturday is the day that we're asked to transform our pain so that we don't live in perpetual bitterness, depression, anger, resentment. Holy Saturday is the day where we gather up all of our shatteredness and present it to God, trusting that in some mysterious way it will be made whole and bring us to Easter. So my request of us is that we actually do this contemplation, and tonight just ask ourselves, where are our Good Fridays? Historically or contemporarily, where are the Good Fridays in the lives of people that we love, or in our country, or in our church? And ask yourself, what part of your life is currently in Holy Saturday? What part of the lives of those that you love are in Holy Saturday? And let's trust the Paschal mystery and hold all that, hand all that to God. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Let's hand over to God our Good Fridays and Holy Saturdays and trust that they will be transformed into an Easter of extraordinary surprise. And the church says, Amen.